Welcome to The Third Opinion, presented by Full Circle Health. Join us each week as we delve into the world of integrative and functional medicine through discussions, interviews, lecture series, and more. Our experts have been on both sides of the Western medical system and understand the frustrations associated with getting real answers about all of the available treatment options. Well, we are here to give you the answers. We'll take the time to break down the latest holistic and integrative medical procedures, supplements, and discoveries to help you better understand your body on a molecular level. Please keep in mind, this podcast was created for educational purposes only and should never be used to take place of a medical diagnosis or treatment. As always, make sure to take the time to submit any questions or comments you may have about today's show so we can give you the answers you need. Now, let's get healthy. Good morning, natural health and truth seekers. It's Dr. Adelena with the Third Opinion podcast. And we are starting a series talking about hormones. And I'm very excited to dive into this big topic because unfortunately, we have been inundated with maybe some misguided information. And I think that it's very critical for us to dive in and really discuss some of the key pieces when it comes to hormones, their transitions, how they work together. And I truly, truly think that functional and naturopathic foundations are the route to go if you are trying to normalize this transition and really trying to establish your authority when it comes to your own hormone and your body. So when we dive in and start discussing, I really want us all to reframe menopause in our minds because unfortunately, so many of us are wired within that Western model to see that it is an estrogen deficiency disease, but truly menopause is a natural hormonal transition and it is not a disease. It's not something that, people struggle with because they did something wrong. It's really even that approach alone is a wonderful way to help balance and be preventative and proactive with your health so that you don't feel blindsided. And unfortunately, so many within past models when it comes to hormonal balance, especially us women, when it comes to menopause, perimenopause, postmenopause, women feel blindsided. They're almost like, what do I do? I started experiencing all these symptoms and yet have very limited amount of evaluations or exploration in their health prior. So they don't always have a good firm foundation of their hormonal health and balance before even undergoing that natural transition. So I think it's very important for us to understand that many of those symptoms that maybe we're experiencing, whether it's hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, vaginal dryness, low libido, all those things, this is signals. That's your body talking to you. And through the naturopathic and even functional medicine route, we're able to tap in and get a snapshot in time of what's happening in someone's body and how can we help ease and support maybe some of these, whether it's imbalances, whether it's a, holistic approach, because a lot of people have a misunderstanding hormones work alone. Well, all of your hormones are processed in your liver, they're metabolized in your gut. So, obviously there are building blocks that come through our diet, such as amino acids. And so there are so many things that play into account when it comes to hormonal balance and health. And if we're just taking a snapshot of looking at your estrogen or something like that, that's not really giving us a clear picture and it's not giving us a safe and effective route to help support you and ease you into this transition that is coming for all of us. So I prompt, as a 33-year-old female, I prompt so many of us within this generation, this decade, to start working on your health beforehand, right? So I wanted to just touch on some of the aspects when it comes to that physiological shift when it comes to perimenopause and menopause and even postmenopause. So naturally, as women, our testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone lessen as we age, unfortunately, mostly to do with our ovarian reserve. So basically, as women, we are born with only so many eggs, and every month we get that egg ready, we drop it in hopes that it becomes fertilized. If it does not, that's when we have our menstrual bleed. And the body kind of sheds that lining and tries again for next month. Well, as we age, that reserve tends to lessen. Now, it's very important to ask your family members, specifically your mom, when she underwent menopause, because there is a genetic component and some of us are predisposed. So if your mom underwent menopause at 50, more than likely that's when you're going to undergo menopause as well. There obviously are circumstantial things that can influence that. But with that, you want to be mindful that those hormones naturally lessen as those egg reserves drop because the body knows, okay, there's not as many eggs to drop, there's less likelihood for pregnancy and development. But as those hormones lessen, the body should have an opportunity or an ability to support those hormones through utilizing your adrenals. And those little adrenals are those glands that sit over your kidneys and produce hormones in response to stress, infection, inflammation. And they're kind of like the safety net as we undergo that transition. And so when you are having that slow, steady decline in so many of those hormones, the adrenals kind of pick up the slack. They say, okay, maybe there's not enough testosterone to support with our sex drive tonight, so we're going to have the adrenals pick up the slack and tell us, okay, let's fake it till we make it a little bit, right? But what's happening is so many of us are undergoing menopause with that adrenal reserve or tank on empty, and there's nothing to pick up that slack. And so many of those symptoms are, coming up to the surface of that hormonal imbalance. So it's very important to also discuss that, as much as your adrenals play a critical component, your thyroid also shifts in response to some of these hormonal fluctuations. Metabolically speaking, if we're not producing enough testosterone or if we're not making some of those hormones that help us with recovery, repair, then that's where those thyroid hormones kind of come in and say, hey, I'm here to help you sweat, help you get, hot and heavy, whichever. So many of what women can see online is they see, oh, I'm gaining weight around my midsection without changing diet. And a lot of that is contributed to cortisol. Cortisol becomes a dominant driver in that transition. And I always express that none of your hormones work alone. Your sex hormones, your thyroid, your adrenals, they all work together in kind of this triangle, and your gut is in the middle, pulling a majority of those strings. So that's where we have to take that holistic approach and evaluation when it comes to hormones. So this is very common, and I see it so often, is that women that may have had the opportunity or ability to eat certain things prior, before menopause or perimenopause, start to note more challenges with eating foods that might be healthy, but unfortunately, our blood sugar instability worsens our symptoms because our cortisol and insulin have an inverse relationship. Unfortunately, if cortisol, which is that stress hormones, and it's out in the bloodstream, insulin can't come out to play. So we start noticing higher blood sugar readings, increase in insulin sensitivity. So we could start experiencing some resistance there. The body starts to like higher sugar and has a harder time processing and utilizing fat as a primary fuel source. So we start storing fat. And unfortunately, what a lot of women don't have that connection with is like hot flashes in itself is a key marker for inflammation, especially inflammation stemming from a vascular level metabolically. So if you're having low grade inflammation somewhere in the body, those hot flashes can be highly amplified. So I really do think that if you are potentially exploring or having had some of these transitions, or maybe you're in the midst of it, then this podcast is for you, because really we want to start working on some of these things before they become an issue. And I can't stress enough that the Western model tries to fix our hormones through telling it what to do instead of looking at the full picture. Oh, take birth control, get a hysterectomy, whatever that might be. And I think that, you know, as a generation here moving forward, we are starting to ask more questions and figuring out like, well, what's happening in my body? How can I support it? And I think that that's a very shift in our medical model and dynamic, because for so many years, we look to our doctors for guidance. And now we're kind of shifting that lens inward, and we're trying to start to advocate for our health and our individuality when it comes to these hormones and how they're talking to each other. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the most common symptoms and some of those root causes that can unfortunately be presenting when it comes to our hormonal shifts and fluctuations. So many of us experience mood changes when it comes to those hormonal shifts. So we can experience things such as anxiety, irritability, sleep disturbances, and even brain fog when those hormones aren't in a good sync and balance. And more so specifically progesterone, which is such a feel good hormone. It helps you sleep, it helps you relax, it helps you with so much. Well, progesterone also binds to the same receptor sites as GABA. And GABA is one of our feel good neurotransmitters. So it's kind of our calming, it's our zen. And that's why oftentimes when pregnant women are in that second trimester, they're like, oh, you have that glow. That's progesterone. Okay. When it's at a good, steady space, that's your body ultimately feeling the benefits that progesterone has to offer. So when that GABA shifts, unfortunately, we can experience more anxiety, irritability, sleep disturbances. Secondarily, estradiol, which is the main form of estrogen for us females, tends to fluctuate. So it tends to have ups and downs during those hormonal shifts. We have it during our natural menstrual cycles, those shifts and ups and downs. But when it starts to have declines and then little upswings, things like that. Unfortunately, it can highly influence another neurotransmitter called serotonin. Serotonin is also one of our feel good neurotransmitters, but when we have too much serotonin, we're anxious. When we don't have enough, we are depressed. And that's where some of that brain fog sensation, if we're not sleeping, our serotonin is low, we can start experiencing all this just blah feeling, right? So mood and your brain are highly, highly influenced by these hormones. Metabolic health. So we start noticing, oh my gosh, we're gaining more weight in our midsection. We're experiencing insulin resistance. We're seeing our cholesterol go up with no changes in our diet. Well, this is a clear note sign that your body is living off of adrenaline or cortisol and not necessarily being able to feel grounded. Obviously, some of those hormonal fluctuations, if we don't have enough GABA or serotonin to kind of balance out, that can also contribute to the cortisol's perception of being out in the bloodstream and not allowing insulin to regulate our blood sugar as well. So I just want this to be very validating for women when they're like, I got this pooch. I can't get rid of this pooch. What's happening? Instead of trying to tackle the pooch, try to look at some other aspects of your day to day to better balance and support that cortisol rhythm. So often I see women skipping meals, getting on calorie restrictive diets in order to try to get rid of that pooch. And unfortunately, they're making that metabolic presentation and stress kind of reactivity worse. And so this is where taking a look and a lens into your labs can really help us highlight, well, how do we approach this, right? Three, so we talked about mood and behavior. We talked about metabolic symptoms that so many of us can experience, but also those vasomotor, like the hot flashes, the night sweats. This is a key driver in even your thyroid shift in contribution when it comes to hormonal balance, because our thyroid, which is that little butterfly shaped gland that sits in our throat and regulates metabolism, its main job is to manage our metabolic health, like help us poop, help us sweat, help our skin, help us lose weight, help us be warm. And when the body is getting these perceived mixed signals from the thyroid, adrenal, and sex hormonal dynamic, we start getting these flushes of hot flashes, basically these flushes of blood flow. We start getting these night sweats, so the body can't thermoregulate at best. And so, how could you know this and not check everything, AKA evaluate that thyroid, those adrenals, and those sex hormones when so much of this are intermingled? And that's why I can't stress enough how frustrating it is that when the Western model doesn't validate some of our efforts through the functional lens of looking at all of it, right? How can you make an educated decision and even feel safe and comfortable starting some of those beneficial strategies, even if it is prescriptive or hormone replacement therapy? I'm not negating the benefits that those carry. The challenge is the safety and the efficacy that's associated with them because the lack of examination. So many of these women are being treated based on clinical presentation. Like, oh, you're having hot flashes. Oh, you don't have enough estrogen. Take estrogen. And then unfortunately, they don't look at the full picture and that woman develops estrogen dominant cancer and the list goes on and on and on, right? So I just want us to have that correlation and connection that hot flashes, night sweats are a key piece to that intricate balance that comes with your hormones, such as your thyroid, your adrenals, and your sex hormones.
We're going to take a quick break from this show to bring you an ad from Starwalker Supplements. If you're a woman who's ever felt like your hormones are running the show, mood swings, low energy, stubborn weight, sleep issues, or those frustrating monthly symptoms, you're definitely not alone. Hormone changes can impact so many areas of your life, but the good news is your body has natural pathways to stay balanced, and sometimes it just needs the right support. That's why I want to tell you about Endostasis, a comprehensive hormone balance supplement designed specifically for women. Endostasis combines powerful ingredients like DIM and calcium D glucarate, which help you support your body's natural estrogen detox pathways, encouraging the removal of excess or unwanted estrogen. It also includes active folate and key methylation nutrients, which are essential for healthy hormone metabolism. And to support overall hormone comfort, endostasis features traditional biobotanicals like Biotex and black cohosh, along with antioxidant-rich extracts from green tea, rosemary, grapeseed. Whether you're dealing with PMS, navigating perimenopause, or adjusting to menopause, endostasis works with your body to help support a more balanced hormonal rhythm. If you've been looking for a natural way to support hormone balance, this could be a great place to start. Learn more about endostasis and how it can support your hormone health by visiting starwalker.com or calling Full Circle Health Clinic at 405-753-9355. Now back to the show.
So many of us can experience a lot of genitourinary symptoms, basically vaginal dryness, recurrent UTIs, pelvic floor changes. Things used to be tight, now they're not, or vice versa. We have discomfort when we have sex or intercourse because the body tightens up. And those are also a reflection of your hormones, specifically those hormones that help with that tissue down there, such as estrogen as well as progesterone. And secondarily, your gut integrity and balance. So many of us don't have that correlation or connection that your hormones are processed at the digestive level. So if there is a lot of perceived inflammation or dysbiosis or whichever, it can vastly influence the GI and the GU, that genitourinary system. And so, exploring your gut health in more depth can help us even optimize proper hormone utilization. So when I see these symptoms in my clinic, like the mood, the metabolic, the hot flashes, the vaginal dryness, I'm not looking at that as the hormones themselves being altered. I want to pull it out, make that lens a heck of a lot bigger in order for us to really support the body and gauging how do we start to synergize this system and recognizing that this is a normal transition. And so much of us are holding on for dear life to make sure that this transition is easy. But I would urge so many of us to start sooner, start earlier, even in our younger generations, the preteens, the girls that start menstruating now at the age of 9. Like that's not typical, right? And so if you're a parent of somebody that's undergoing that, you need to start advocating for their health and start evaluating things further. And some of us can maybe say, oblivion is bliss, or oh, it'll work itself out, and whatever that might be. But we had this tool at our disposal. We didn't have it before. We didn't have the training, the background, the access to the testing. Now we do. So there's no excuse to not explore them and support within what we call generational health. And so much of it happens even for babies in utero. What are mom's hormones? What were so I could go on and on about it, but I just want this to kind of open that lens and that perspective into our hormonal podcast series. Today, I'm kind of just setting that foundation and framework for us to really debunk some of those past misconceptions when it comes to menopause. Like I expressed, we see it as a disease. It happens to everybody. It's not a disease. Okay. This is a natural flow and shifts in our hormones. It's just, when does that hormonal shift happen for you? What is your body's system reserve and presentation in those instances of time, whether it's actively within that moment of hormonal shifts or leading all the way up to it? And that's why through that naturopathic lens, when I work with my patients, I'm going through their health history all the way back to what their mom's pregnancy with them was like, where they grew up, what vaccines they had, illnesses. I'm really, truly trying to learn everything about this patient so that we can come up with the most effective and connective plan. I say connective because that's what holistic medicine is taking everything to account and then rationalizing our approaches, right? So I wanted to talk about some of our potentially non-negotiables when it comes to the naturopathic and functional interventions with this natural hormonal shifts, okay? So there are some, foundational or what I would call non-negotiables, and one of which is, nutritionally, I think it's very critical for us to optimize our protein intake as females. I think that so many of us are being, you know, trained in the idea that protein is like a male thing. I don't know why, but it's funny how now even social media is picking up on women. And I see all these fake posts of women, got to hit my protein. So, I mean, there is more awareness out there. But realistically, as a female, it's so important for us to get on average 25 to 35 grams of protein per meal. And so just for reference, like a 4-ounce chicken breast, that's close to 20 ounces of protein. So it's not to say that maybe you're not getting it. It's just to say that we have to reevaluate some of our food and our plate composition. So the other thing is blood sugar stabilization. Oh my gosh, you guys, I see so many patients come in with elevated hemoglobin A1Cs, high fasting glucose, and they're not eating. And they're like, well, why is my sugar? It's like you are having what's called reactive hyperglycemia. Your body is trying to protect you. And with that, it's throwing sugar into the bloodstream to say she needs to keep going with running on empty. Well, we need to shift that dynamic. And so many women that present to me for hormonal balance, they get almost mad when they're like, I'm having difficulty losing weight. And I'm like, you need to start eating every 2 to 3 hours. And they're like, what? How am I supposed to do that? And, we have to get out of those past dogmas and, mindsets when it comes to weight loss. At the end of the day, we are not chasing weight loss. We are chasing hormonal optimization and we are chasing health. Okay. And there's a difference. Obviously, when I work on hormones, we get to that body composition component later on in our protocols. But realistically speaking, we're trying to help these hormones to get our body out of that vicious cycle of distress. So, blood sugar stabilization is one of the biggest key pieces in order to try to support your body's ability to transition well. Fiber is a huge component when it comes to, yes, blood sugar stabilization, but also hormonal benefit. Because when we think of the digestive level, it's so critical to feed that beneficial flora. And fiber is itself a prebiotic. So it helps optimize that proper digestive function, producing good quality short chain fatty acids such as, valerate and butyrate and, propionate, all these great things that help us, protect our colon from, colorectal cancer, diverticulosis, but more so specifically our mood and our digestive motility and our balance and our digestive flora. I mean, so much. So fiber is so critical. And these are things that you can start implementing today, even if you don't have hormonal challenges at this moment in time. Movement. I can't stress enough the biggest risk factor for us as women when we undergo menopause is insulin resistance, as I expressed, but really bone density and bone health. So many of us experience or at a higher risk for osteoporosis or osteopenia, whether it's genetically attributed, but also through these hormonal fluctuations. So if we're not moving, if we're not horny, all these things, I mean, that's your body literally saying we're going into shutdown. Okay. And so it is very, very important to support your bone density through resistance style training, which is, low weight, high reps, focusing on that flexibility, that mobility, because really we want to preserve our joints, but also helping our bone density by more of those body weight training. Unfortunately, a lot of patients, you when we think of training, they want to get into a healthy fit, body and they want to lift all this weight. I'm like, the heaviest thing you can realistically lift at this point in the game is your own body weight. So it's very important to explore those resistance training, whether it's flexibility, mobility efforts like Pilates, bar, yoga, because there's obviously some added benefit when it comes to deep breathing and relaxation. But it is so critical for your body to also feel grounded, to be like, okay, I can support myself, right? And so doing more resistance training, whether it's some push-ups or stork poses when you're doing yoga, those are big key drivers in osteoporosis prevention, bone support, but also that insulin resistance, right? The more we move, the more the body can use that sugar as opposed to store it for later use and contribute to all that cortisol rhythm in challenges. So, you know, and this is something that, like, if I had to start with three things, I would start with those foundational nutritional things. I would start with that movement, more body weight driven, more breath work driven, mobility driven, and sleep. Sleep is such a key driver. If you're not having good quality sleep or deep restorative sleep, that is one step into burning out those adrenals before you can get through that menopausal window in time. So, some of the biggest things I talk about is, morning light exposure. So many of us are into that LA style lifestyle where we wear sunglasses in the morning, whatever that might be. Don't do that. You need that morning light exposure. You need your body to recognize when it's day, we are awake, when it's night, we go to sleep. And so, sleep. And this is how I explain it to so many of my patients. I mean, I'm a mother of two, I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, but it was so important for us to get their sleep regular. And, when you're putting a baby to sleep, what are they doing when they're sleeping? They're growing, they're healing, they're making new nervous tissue, new bones, they became from a 9-pound baby to now my kid's almost 68 pounds, So how do they do that? Sleep. So if you're struggling with joint pain, if you're struggling with imbalances, whatever that might be, sleep is the cure. Okay. Obviously, there are some adaptogenic herbs and nutrients that can help with that cortisol rhythm regulation. But the other thing is we eat during the day, we get outside during the day, and it's dark. We don't eat and sleep at night. Right. And so keeping that blood sugar stable throughout the day also highly influences our body's perception and ability to sleep at night. So many of us, unfortunately, especially in that menopausal state, can notice frequent wakings during the nighttime, not only because the hot flashes and night sweats, but also because they're wired but tired. Their body's like, I'm exhausted, but their brain is like, we keep going. A lot of that has to do with blood sugar. The body is looking for that. So some of the strategies even I discuss is eating something before you go to bed, almost like, remember when you had your babies and they had to drink a big old bottle, keep them asleep all night, right? So that also plays a part here in our nervous system regulation and sleep optimization. So nutrition, movement, sleep. Those are the top three and what I call non-negotiables. But then there are obviously some supplemental strategies that you can explore. These are just, I'm just giving you reference. These are not specific to you, but I want us to have a little bit of framework and foundation for when maybe in our future podcast series, we go into some of those symptom patterns and some of the ways that we can support. So if you're, working with a functional naturopath and they have run your assessments and you have been able to see your hormones up and down, wherever they might be, progesterone. Progesterone, as I expressed, is a calming hormone. We love progesterone, okay? But there are obviously some supportive strategies to optimize it. Well, as I expressed, GABA binds to the same receptor sites as progesterone, as well as vitamin D. So optimizing your vitamin D is a key piece in cortisol rhythm, but also progesterone support. Other nutrients that work synergistically with vitamin D is magnesium, but more so specifically, I like to support and introduce something called magnesium glycinate. This is a very calming. Glycine is a or a amino acid that mimics and supports a lot of our calming neurotransmitters. And so that magnesium in that glycinated form, which is basically they added and formulated that glycine into that form to synergistically bind with magnesium, and it helps with calming, it helps with relaxation, it helps you get to sleep. So magnesium glycinate is a key piece and intro kind of supplement in order to help with that deep sleep and restoration, but also help the body balance that progesterone. There are other nutrients, and I can't stress enough how critical it is for us to explore methylation and that status in order for you to really see how your hormones are being processed and cleared. But one of those key drivers and nutrients that plays a part in methylation is vitamin B6. And B6 also plays a contributing role within progesterone. So when I see a woman without, maybe they have high homocysteine, low B12 and folate, typically speaking, and suboptimal progesterone, B6 is a key piece that's contributing to that. So when we're looking at methylated supportive agents, we might be exploring a methylated complex that has that B6 within that. Other nerve, like adaptogenic herbs, as well as herbal formulas that are very beneficial for progesterone. Chastity berry. Chastity berry alone itself is a very, it's a berry. It's very sweet. I personally love the glycerated form of some of these, but chastity berry, that's oftentimes in the alcohol, is a little bit bitter, but chastity is an herb that is highly associated with the progesterone balance, also known as Vitex. And so maybe you've seen some formulations that carry Vitex, but you do want to have a good gauge of where your progesterone is before starting some of these things. Because if you are experiencing maybe some symptoms like bloating, water retention, breast tenderness, then that might be a sign that you actually have too much progesterone or lethargy, whatever. So working with somebody that's skilled and aware of some of these symptoms and connections, but secondarily is checking the right labs and not treating you based on just your symptoms alone. So, as we just expressed, we're organizing some symptoms and what could be associated, but let's say hot flashes. Maybe you're experiencing a lot of hot flashes. Well, that's where glycine, maybe even just starting with that magnesium glycinate could be a good start, but glycine, that amino acid in itself, can also be very beneficial for the hot flashes. Flax lignans, which is just basically the outer shell of some of those flax seeds, which is like the essential fatty acid on the outer ring of that flax. Those lignans are very binding, but they're very restorative for estrogen. And oftentimes when we have these hot flashes, it's a fluctuation in that estrogen that's causing it. And I don't know if many of you recall, but estrogen has a key piece in our vascular presentation. More so specifically, do you remember when they would say like, oh, you can't take birth control and be a smoker and sit on a long flight because you would be more at risk for like a blood clot? Well, that's because you're getting this estrogen all the time. And then if you're adding, let's say, smoking or high elevations, which can influence the vascular flow, then unfortunately that can negatively influence, the likelihood of those vessels to be irritated, burst, or, get damaged. So flax lignans work on estrogen, but they also work on that vascular flow and tone. Other herbs that are very supportive of estrogen and hot flashes would be black cohosh, which black cohosh is such an amazing herb. And realistically, it has such a foundation even within the traditional Chinese medicine route as a blood tonic, as a woman tonic. And so, there are so many formulas that are out there that maybe carry some of these things, but we want to support the individual, right? So let's say we're having more of that brain fog, some of those mood and behavior related symptoms. Well, that's where maybe exploring some of those good quality omega 3s, which are essential fatty acids that help as an anti inflammatory, but more so specifically, omega 3 fatty acids are the outer ring of every which of our cells is a phospholipid bilayer, which basically means there's a fat. And so if there's a lot of cellular damage and a lot of those key nutrients are not necessarily being driven or supported to the brain and to the neurological system, well, it starts with each cell. And so those essential fatty acids, how they improve and support inflammation is by helping cellular repair. Okay. So they're building that outer cellular membrane to help the body bring and be more fluid with bringing those nutrients where they needed to go. And let's be clear, you're not going to take an omega-3 fatty acid and be like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. Like that's what I always have to make clear to so many patients. There are some, structured specific omega-3s that are high concentrated, formulated specifically for pain that you might get immediate relief with. But an omega-3 fatty acid, we can gather so much of that through our food, right? Eating wild caught seafood, pasture raised eggs, fortified dairy products, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil. I mean, realistically, we want to get a lot of those omega 3s through our diet and then supplement if need be, right? But we want to get proactive with some of these things because, as I expressed, there are some of those metabolic presentations like women experiencing higher cholesterol with no change in their diet. It's unfortunate due to the fact that the body isn't getting enough of these omega-3 fatty acids to repair the damage. They're not getting enough sleep, which the sleep is not allowing them to get repair. So the list in that vicious cycle goes on and on. So let's throw the body a bone and give them some good quality fish oils, okay? And omega-3 doesn't only solely have to come from animal-based. There are plant-based, obviously avocados, coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, chia seeds, So there are vegan or vegetarian sources for those omega-3s as well. We're also seeing emerging evidence when it comes to creatine. Obviously, we have to be conscientious of blood viscosity and some of our presentations, but creatine is basically supporting lean muscle mass, it's supporting cognitive function, and it is supporting cellular repair. And so a lot of times it's helping thin that blood, getting blood to go to the brain and help with some of what we would have that perceived brain fog. But other than that, I mean, creatine is an amino acid. So if you think of it this way, it's helping the building block of blood sugar stabilization and so much more. Creatine is something to be on the lookout. I do typically say about 5 grams to, maybe starting at 2.5 and build up. If you have digestive distress with creatine, that means you're not getting the good stuff. Okay. And so that's something, a key driver when people are like, oh, I started taking creatine and I got like the runs or something. It's like, well, that means that you're not getting a standardized formula that's good. If you're other herbs, I love rhodiola rosea, one of my favorite herbs. It's an adaptogenic herb. It helps honestly with that sense of grace and calm. And I can't stress it enough how beautiful adaptogenic herbs are when you select the right one. So if it's appropriate, you will feel those, okay? Metabolic shifts. So a lot of us, unfortunately, can be experiencing some of the insulin resistance or cholesterol imbalance. And so there are some, nutrients like berberine, inositol. Those would be foundational things that you can introduce to help.
Thank you for tuning in to the Third Opinion podcast, where we believe your health deserves more than just one perspective. If you learned something today that could help you on your health journey or others, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're ready to take the next step, don't forget you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with a naturopathic doctor to explore your health goals and get personalized guidance. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep taking steps toward better health.